Welcome to the Refine and Shine, the podcast dedicated to mastering the art of continuous improvement and optimizing every aspect of your life. I'm Angelina Rivera, your host, and together we'll uncover the secrets to refining our lives, our habits, and our processes to unlock our inner brilliance. Join us on Refine and Shine, where we'll delve deep into achieving more in life without the burnout and without all the stress. This podcast is your platform for a more fulfilling life through continuous improvement and personal growth. In each episode, I and a diverse array of guests discuss practical strategies for up-leveling every aspect of your life. From developing good habits and organizing your space to refining your mindset and personal goals, we're going to explore it all. Our guests share personal stories about the systems they developed or systems they've used and the tweaks they've made in their lives when refinement was needed, allowing them to truly shine. Listen to Refine and Shine to learn how you can implement continuous improvement techniques in your daily routine, develop and maintain healthy habits that lead to success and satisfaction, organize your life to reduce the stress and increase your productivity, foster a growth mindset that propels you to new heights. My mission is to inspire you to take bold action, make positive changes, and become the best version of yourself. Whether you're aiming to elevate your career, nurture meaningful relationships, or enhance your overall well-being, Refine and Shine is your guiding light. With over 25 years of experience in continuous improvement, I help businesses streamline their processes, establish efficient work areas, and implement standard work protocols. I have trained over 600 individuals and teams in process improvement, optimizing workflows, and enhancing overall operational efficiency. Tune in every week as we embark on an enlightening journey, exploring paths to refinement and illuminating the way to shine in every area of our lives. Subscribe now and join us on this journey to polish your life and let your best self shine through. Thank you for joining us on Refine and Shine. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Refine and Shine podcast. I'm so excited that you're here today. I thank you all for tuning in, and I have a very, very special guest today. My friend Cherry is here today, and she is such an amazing person, and she has such an amazing story. And I just can't wait for us to get into the juicy details of how she has just sparkled and shined in her life today through some hard things. She's a mother of 3 boys. She has 2 teenagers and an angel baby. And also she's currently expecting. She was a single mom until she met her current partner. She's a licensed practitioner nurse of 17 years. She's a Reiki practitioner, a body sculpting artist, and she is a creator of 2 podcasts. And I think that's so amazing because it's just awesome. Her 2 podcasts, one of them is called Still I Rise. And then the other podcast is Taming Darkness, Finding Your Magic Through Pain. She's also the founder of Hudson's Gift, which is providing comfort to NICU families suffering through infant loss. So I'm so excited that you're here because you and I have known each other for a long time, many, many years. And just great to connect with you and find a way that we can share your purpose and your mission and, just some of the things that you went through in life to make it so you can shine today. So welcome. And I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you so much. I feel honored and thank you for inviting me to be on your podcast today.
I will say that you have been somebody that I have continued to watch, even though we haven't physically connected face to face, touched each other, so to speak. I just love and admire what you stand for and all the things that you have been through. And I know life has not been easy. And so just tell me a little bit. I mean, I know like your first podcast, Still I Rise. Can you tell me a little bit about that podcast and why you started it?
First of all, thank you so much. That means a lot. Um, as for Still I Rise, I actually started that podcast when I was first going through a divorce. I try not to speak too illy of, the past, but, to be completely transparent, there was a lot of, abuse going on and, I've faced a lot of trauma. Actually, after I had left that marriage, I didn't realize how much trauma I had. Um, I needed a therapeutic outlet. And I remember I was having lunch with one of my friends, and she said, you should write a book about this. Your experience is pretty crazy. And I mean, if you want to get into the experience, you could just listen to the podcast and there you go. Um, it was just the experience during that time was so unreal to the point where it's like the story had to be told. And again, it was a very therapeutic outlet for me. So I started that podcast thinking that it was just going to be a way for me to vent, to just share my thoughts. And I didn't think anybody was going to listen in. And, you know, to my surprise, I ended up getting more listeners, and I had that podcast going for about 4 years. And, it's I have to say, like, when I first started that podcast and when I listen to it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just ranting.
Mhm.
But I feel that there's been a lot of growth since that time, especially going through experiences and, just learning from those experiences. Uh, my main objective for that was to just tell my story of having to start from scratch after leaving an 11-year marriage, and picking myself back up as I picked up the pieces of my the broken pieces of my children after having to go through a divorce, having to lose their dad, and having to see their dad in a specific state of just a very poor condition mentally, and you know um just health wise as well. And I know I wasn't really the best during that time either. So it's like I did my best, and that's actually why I named it, You Just Continue to Rise. I wanted to just share my story in hopes to empower other women, who are in that type of relationship, that feel that they're stuck because they can't do it on their own. I wanted to share with women my story, or I wanted to share my story with other women to let them know, hey, if somebody like me can do it, you can do it too.
I love that. I love that. And that's the thing that I think that it's so important is to share our stories, because there's so many times that we have been in silence, right? And we feel like we're too scared to talk about the pain that we're going through. We're scared of what people think, we're scared of judgment, but yet we're hurting inside, and nobody knows the real, right? Like the raw and the emotions that we're going through. And that's why when I was talking about my podcast, that my podcast had actually been on my mind for over a year, and it was something, and I was like, I had the name, I had all these things, and then I was like, I kind of tweaked it around a little bit and was like, what was my mission? And I kept putting it off and putting it off. And then I was on a hike with somebody, and one of my friends, and I was talking to her, and I was like, I was talking and talking, and she's like, man, you're talking a lot. I go, well, I got stuff to say. I said another word, but I was like, I got stuff to say. And she said, that's what my podcast should be. And I'm like, no, I'm going to leave it as it is, because I have really felt this is important. But maybe another podcast later, I'll have another one that will say, like, will just be the raw, like, this is it.
I gotta say though, it's pretty liberating when you just kind of take out all the censors and the filters, and you just say what's on your mind.
Yeah.
But good
Yeah.
for you though. I'm so proud of you for, like, really. I think it takes courage to actually start your own podcast, to actually put yourself out there. So I applaud you, lady, for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And another thing I want to talk about is the other part would be you had the second podcast that you just started, and I just listened to the last episode earlier today, and that one is Taming Your Darkness, Finding Your Magic Through Pain. And I know that this was a really, like, your emotions. I've listened to it, from the beginning, and then the last episode is pretty. I mean, not the last episode I just listened to. I've been listening to it, but tell me a little bit about that, because I've been following your journey, and do you want to speak about that and how you got through all of it?
I'm very open about everything. You know, this is another reason why I love doing podcasts, because you're sharing your pain. It's like it's another outlet and another way for you to work through these emotions. Because otherwise, if you do not allow yourself to feel and go through these feelings, you're never going to heal. It's going to, it's basically going to eat you up. And I speak through experience with that.
So, and with the podcast, Still I Rise, you went through and you talked about the real raw pain and all the things that you were going through. And so what are besides the podcast, what are some of the other things and the things that you work through to heal yourself so that some of my listeners, if they're going through some, emotional pain or, a relationship that, not in the best relationship and things like that, what are the ways, because you went, like you said, you went from nothing, you like left with nothing and had to rebuild. So what is some of the things that you went through?
Um, well, it's like as it was like financial, emotional. Um, I mean, shoot, I'm just gonna be blunt. I mean, it is what it is.
Mhm.
I was my self-esteem was really crushed after this. You know, there was a lot of drug use involved during that time, and worst. I don't want to say it was the worst thing, but this did nothing for my self-worth and my self-esteem. I was cheated on with somebody that, how would we say this in a much more pleasant way? I was cheated on with a crackhead. So, I mean, you can only imagine as a woman how that would make you feel.
Yeah.
Um, I definitely had to, like, I think I had to really just choose to, you know, what's the word? I actually use this in my other podcast too. It's like I had to wilt in order to bloom. I had to put myself in the dark, and um, I guess you could say I had to screw up in order to learn. During that time, it's like it's like I'm not proud of this, but it's like I kind of, went through some serial dating, and until I started to feel good about myself, I actually poured myself into work. During that time, I was very heavily into a multi-level marketing, no names mentioned, but it had to do a lot with financial planning and everything.
Mhm.
uh, and I utilized that, to keep myself busy. I found myself, like, the busier I was, I felt that the more valuable I was.
Mhm.
Which it did help, because I felt like it helped build up my character. But during this time, as I was putting my apartment together, and I think that this is kind of like the honeymoon phase for any woman that like leaves like they leave a marriage and they start all over. It's like they get to actually have their little bachelorette pad. And I don't know if we have any fans of Breakfast at Tiffany's, but it's like my entire living room was decorated with Holly Golightly. And if you listen to my Still I Rise podcast, my alias on there was Cherry Golightly because of Holly Golightly. Because I admired how Holly Golightly left a marriage and she started a life in New York, and I wanted to be that free spirited soul just like her. And then, you know, um, after a while, it's like, I guess you could say, I, you know, after putting my apartment together and seeing how, even though I struggled, things got better. I, I saw how much life was improving, and I was like, shoot, like I didn't feel the need that I had to date anymore in order to feel like valued. I was like, I'm doing this on my own.
Right.
It's like I'm paying my bills on my own. I'm taking care of my kids on my own. And, it kind of gave me that ego boost where it's like, I don't need anybody. I got this. And then of course, later on when the pandemic hit, um, I have to warn you, this is a little bit on the woo-woo side. Um, I went through what some would call a spiritual awakening. And, I went from being this social butterfly because I was doing network marketing. And all of a sudden, I started getting social anxiety. All of a sudden, I was depressed and I didn't understand why. And I realized that I was actually going through a spiritual change. And this is when I realized that I needed, I don't know, it was weird because I feel that things kind of align. I don't know if you believe in synchronicity,
Yes, I do.
but okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So there was a lot of things that were like happening. I was seeing a lot of signs, and then um out of nowhere, I was in this financial planning for like, I want to say almost 10 years. And when the pandemic hit, I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And there was no ill will with anybody. It was just, it wasn't for me anymore. I wanted to spend time with my children. And then I realized, crap, I need to work on myself. There's so much crap within myself that, I like, dang, I didn't know. Like, so I connected with a friend of mine who actually used to be in that same company. But I mean, he actually like went off the grid for a bit, and then he contacted me and told me he was doing this program, this self mastery program. And I was like, well, what do I have to lose? So I invested in the program, and some of the stuff that we had to do in that program was pretty deep. Like some of the exercises that we had to do, like you had to write a letter to the people. Who do you want to forgive? Who hurt you? Why did they hurt you? These are things that you have tucked away in your closet, darkness.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, let's be honest. Like, you know, maybe even in our past, we never wanted to go through that. We're like, I'm just
Mhm.
going to leave it there. But from what I learned, that shadow work, which is what we call it, it needs to be done no
Yes,
matter
exactly.
how much it hurts. So that was like my first dip into the shadow work where I had to like write this crap down. And then, we actually had to like share it with a group of people on Zoom. And oh my gosh, like I was completely like just effed up. I'm like, oh my God, why am I bringing this up right now? You know what I mean? It's like, but the fact that all of that, there's an awareness to it. And even till this day, I'm like, crap, no wonder I don't, I'll be like, I don't like it when people do this. And I'm like, oh shoot, when I was little, this is what happened. So now you have an awareness.
Mm.
Um, so a lot of it had to do with experiencing things. Sorry, I'm probably going on a tangent,
No,
but
you're fine. You're totally fine.
having to go through so much trauma, and then just taking that time for yourself and just being quiet, like just kind of like, sitting in the quiet,
Yes.
and being that lone wolf, not for a long period of time, but there's times where you have to be that lone wolf, if that makes sense.
No, exactly. That's some of the things I went through something really similar in healing and having to write the letter. And mine was a little different. I was having to write that letter to the 5-year-old, you as a 5-year-old, like, what would you
Mhm.
say to her? And it came down to the point where I felt like my little girl letting her know that she did matter because that for, and it was, I know that my family listens to this and things like that, but it was just little things that people maybe had said or things like that, like where I felt like I didn't matter. And I didn't, so I was quiet a lot, even though my sisters would probably say you were loud, but it was when like in the family, I spoke up sometimes, but when it was like in front of like work or something like that, like I would not step up because I was afraid to be shut down because I felt like I didn't matter. Like that was our, and so I would say yes to people like stop what I was doing to help somebody and all those things because I wanted to feel loved and that I mattered. So I totally get what you're saying. I actually think that writing letters to even those who you need to have forgive or those who even to yourself is perfectly fine. And in it also sitting in that moment and sitting what triggers you when you have that triggering moment or something happens and it's like, wait, why is this happening? Why am I feeling like this? Like getting down to the root cause is so
Mhm.
important. And it's so I totally it's so important that people figure when they get anxious about something or when they are scared to do something, like what is behind that? What is the reasoning? And just go, digging deep into it. And some people just don't want to deal with it. They just want to keep squashing the pain, but or squashing it down, but it affects you. It causes
Oh,
anxiety and
yeah.
stress and depression, and you got to figure out what it is. So it's not easy, and it's not like it's going to happen overnight. Like
No.
there's things that you have to work through, and so you have worked through all of those things. I think that's amazing.
My analogy for those types of emotions, it's kind of like I'm a horror fan, sorry, so excuse my weirdness for this, but it's like burying a dead body. Eventually, it's going to decompose and you're going to smell it and you're going to have to face it. So you might as well, like you said, it's not going to happen overnight. You do have to give yourself grace, and sometimes you just have to work through the crappy parts of it.
Hmm. And that's the only way we're going to be able to heal, or at least learn how to deal with that emotion when it comes up again,
Mhm.
or that trigger.
Absolutely.
I think that one of the most, I don't know, remember if it was on your TikTok or on your Instagram when you made that video of you closing that chapter for real, like, but when you dropped off your wedding dress, like
Oh,
that was
wow.
like, yeah, because it spoke so much volume. I mean, like I don't need this. Why am I holding on to this that I don't need? Like that relationship is gone. It's done. Why am I holding on to things that it's no longer serving me? So I think that was like
Yes.
very.
When it comes down to, I'm a firm believer, and this is why it's like one of my pet peeves are hoarding. It's like, and I know that a lot of people are like, well, it has sentimental value. I'm a firm believer that certain items they hold energy within them too. So it's like you have to get rid of them. If it
Mhm.
no longer, like you said, if it no longer serves you, why? It's like it's just an item. Actually, I remember one of my coworkers, she's also, very sensitive to energy. And so I had shared with her that my ex-husband had written me a letter. She's like, did you get rid of it right away? I'm like, oh no, it's still in my desk. She's like, girl, you need to get rid of that,
Mhm.
because it's still holding on to energy. So it's kind of like, okay, which makes sense. And even if it didn't have energy, why are you holding on to something that's going to just upset you? If
Yeah.
you're going to be staring at it. um and these materialistic things, they don't matter anyways, you know
Right. Yeah. My husband always says if it's not like it's not going to go with you, like you can't take it with you when you leave this earth. So why are we having it? Or you know, and we know, and we get to those points where we hold on to stuff, and it's like, okay, what is it for? And for me, like I had like it's a scarcity mindset sometimes, right? And then you have to
Yes.
get through that. Like, do you really need this, or can you just let it go? So those are the things too that I think is, and part of that's the healing, right? Or that's the not the healing. I mean, it's like the things that have happened to us in the past where maybe we didn't have enough money when we were growing up, or we didn't have this. So once like
Yes.
we're gonna hold on to all the clothes that we buy because we just like what if, and we don't need those. I'm like,
What if I can fit into this? Like, I'm gonna try to lose weight in 2 months and try to fit into it. You're never gonna wear it. Like, it's sometimes I feel like I do that too. But every time I purge, I'm like, do I need this? And sometimes it might, and I think that this is okay. It takes you like 3 or 4 times of purging
mhm,
before sessions of purging. You're like, dude, I should have like threw this away like the first session. But
yeah,
so stubborn. But I mean, at least you gave yourself some time to get rid of it. And another thing I have to add, when it comes down to stuff, it's like to like letting go of things. You got to let go of things to make room for the new to
yes,
come in.
exactly. Yes. That's one of the things like we talk about that and just as a family like hey, we got to get rid of these things because something new is going to come. It's something and it's even your relationships, even your all of those things like if all the things that are holding you taking up space, you got to make room for it if you want to grow and all those things. That was something that I really recently I left my job of 17 and a half years to go to another job, and I fly back and forth, and it's crazy that I do this, but but during that time in between the time that I applied, the interview process, all of those things, it took a lot of surrendering, healing, and just like, okay, am I ready for this? Am I ready to like take on something, a whole new thing? And and who am I surrounding myself with? Am I surrounding me with people who are like, you're dumb for doing this job, or how could you do this? You're supporting the war fighter, now you're leaving. Do you not care? And I'm like, I am doing this for the greater of not only me, but for my family who truly matters. They want their mom home or their wife home more. It's just all those things that you have to kind of go through. And I'm like, those people who are putting me down or saying it's dumb. You can just not have a space in my surroundings, so to speak.
Absolutely. It's yeah, sometimes you have to purge out relationships, and I totally understand. I can relate to that because I went from having a huge circle to now, I mean, I think I can only count my circle with like one hand, and I'm totally okay with that because it's like, do you really need an abundance of people in your life? It's just the few good ones that are there. Opinions are cool, I think, but it's like, I think that as a good friend, it's also good to be mindful that, anytime your friend is making a decision, especially like a life changing decision, it's always good to hold space for them and to allow them to, walk through their own path and, and just enjoy their own journey, even though you might think that it's, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, I don't really have the tolerance for people like that now, where it's like, oh, you're doing this now?
Mhm.
When they have their opinion, it's like, that's cute. Have your opinion and go over there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Another thing that you had went through though, that was one that was hard, that, the relationship, the marriage for many years, and then you had another journey that you went through. And can you talk a little bit about Hudson and all of that you went through?
Well, that was quite a journey, obviously. First things first, being pregnant at 38, again, dipping into everybody having their opinions. And I understand, I try to see it from both sides because it's like there are certain relationships that you cannot purge out, but you have to just take it in as best as you can and take it with a grain of salt. Um, the very beginning of it, I didn't get positive feedback when I shared my pregnancy. It's like, you're old, you know, this baby might have XYZ going on with them. And it's like that whole fear thing where it's like,
Mhm.
you better be careful because if you do this baby might have Down syndrome. This baby might be autistic. It's like that negativity there. And for me, I was just like, you know what? I wanted to have this baby. So I had to deal with that, went through my pregnancy, and I was like, crap, I feel like I have no support from, that group of people. But then again, I did have, I had, it's not that I didn't have support at all, but from this particular group, I felt like I didn't have any support. Um, and then everything was going well during that pregnancy up until I hit my 19th week scan. And they were telling me that he wasn't growing, and I had little to no fluid, amniotic fluid. And that made it very, I was like, wow. Then the doctor said there's a possibility this baby might have Down syndrome. So guess what? Because of the fact that somebody predicted that, or like kind of put that fear into my head, I didn't want to share what was truly happening, during this pregnancy. I had to act like everything was okay.
Mhm.
And we all know that when you are put in that position where you have to act like everything is okay and you can't be vulnerable, you have to pick yourself up and act like everything is cool, it kills you. So, it wasn't up until like it started to get really bad, I actually shared it. Um, and there was like during that visit when they told us what was going on, the doctor even said, yeah, you guys might want to terminate the pregnancy, which was tough because his heartbeat was good. He was moving. And I'm like, I'm not going to terminate this pregnancy just because he might have Down syndrome. Or, it's like, I felt like as a parent, I wanted to give him that fighting chance. It was my duty to be there for him, as long as I can. I'm not going to terminate a pregnancy just because the baby is not normal or healthy. So, um, it was tough. There was a lot of, during this time, the holidays came up, and um, you know, I tried to keep my fluids up. I mean, I don't know how the heck I honestly felt like I was going to be able to do that, because it's not like you know what I mean? How do you
Yeah.
put amniotic
Right.
fluid into your belly? But I did everything that I could. I went onto this Facebook group that, for oligohydramnios, and I started, reading into what these other moms were doing. And even as a nurse, it's like, I mean, I might be frowned upon by other nurses and medical people for this, but it's like, I don't, when it, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not all about textbooks. I still believe in miracles. I still believe in
Mhm.
hope, you know, um, because everything that they were telling me based off of textbook knowledge, this baby wouldn't have had a chance. But I was, Kevin and I were like, you know what, let's keep going. And then, until that day that they told me, you're going to have to go into the hospital. I didn't want to go. It really was hard because I had to leave my two boys behind, and it was the holidays. I had to make sure that, all the Christmas gifts were under the tree before I left, because I didn't want anyone else's Christmas to be messed up. um it was very emotional before I left. uh and then it's like, it was, I felt like that day that I got admitted, like right before we left, I had to do all of my last things because I didn't know when I was going to be coming out.
Right.
So when they admitted me, that was like the scariest thing, because I was like, okay, how's the baby? Is the baby going to be okay? Um, and it was like they gave me steroids, and it was kind of comical. I mean, it wasn't comical then. I guess I can say it's comical now, but apparently they weren't reading or communicating with each other, and they forgot that they gave me steroids. So I had that first night, I had I had an EKG done, I had a chest x-ray done, and I didn't get any sleep till 4 o'clock in the morning, because like the whole entire like medical team was there hassling with me. And they're like, we have to figure out why your blood pressure is high, and why your pulse is high, and why your, white blood cell count is high. And then I was like, 2 days later, I'm like, could it have had anything to do with the fact that you guys gave me steroids? And they're like, you
Mhm.
got steroids? I'm like, oh my God, are you
Yeah.
serious? So I was like, I could have been in peace. So that was like the first night. And then, it's like every week they were monitoring. And because when I was admitted, I had no fluid.
Wow.
But then it went up to 4 centimeters, and then it went up to 5, and then it was all the way up to 7. So I spent the holidays there. We made the most of it. There was a lot of things I wanted to do with this pregnancy. I wanted to have a maternal or a maternity shoot. I wanted family photos, because I was already assuming this was going to be my last pregnancy, and then, unfortunately, when I got like, admitted, I was like, crap, none of this is going to happen. Um, but my boyfriend and the boys were ever so like, they surprised me. They're like, okay, we're going to give you your red dress. So we actually had a family photo shoot like at
Yeah, I
the
remember that.
hospital.
Yeah.
So I was actually very happy about that. And then, on New Year's Eve, my boyfriend came, snuck me in some sushi. I've done that. But yeah, like oh yeah, and then Christmas, he took me to the, I don't know. I'm surprised we didn't get in trouble, because he kidnapped me and drove me around the beach. And I'm like, I'm gonna get in trouble. They're gonna like sign me out AMA.
Mhm.
But he took me to the top of the parking structure, and we watched the sunset. And thankfully the nurses were so pleasant. They understood. Um, New Year's, we did our countdown, and the next morning, like Hudson was, as they said, not behaving normal during the stress tests. And then they had the ultrasound tech come in with a machine, and then they're like, oh, something's up. The nurse says, I'm gonna hold your lunch. As soon as she said that, I'm like, oh shoot, they're gonna deliver me today. I know it. And then like my boyfriend's like, I'm gonna go home and feed the dogs. I'm like, you might want to stay just in case. He's like, just in case what? Sure enough, he had to turn around because they're like, we're gonna deliver you today. And I was like, what time? They're like 4:30. I'm like, it's 3:30. So it's like really quickly they prepped me. They gave me steroids, and I had a C-section, and I was actually impressed because it took 3 minutes for them to take baby Hudson out. He was only a pound and 11.5 ounces, 12.5 inches. It was scary. I think that was the scariest I've ever been. I remember going into the operating room, and my legs were trembling because I was like, is my baby going to live?
Mm-hmm.
When I heard that cry, I was like, okay, he's going to be okay. After my 2 births, like, it's like, we all know how that is. It's magical. You can, you do the skin
Hold the
to
baby.
skin,
Yeah.
hold the baby, and it's like love at first sight. Unfortunately, that's not how it was with Hudson. It's like all I saw was, well, Kevin got to cut the umbilical cord, and I said, did you get to see him? And he was like, I just saw him. He was tiny, but he was wrapped up in like a bunch of like plastic bags and blankets. And I was like, oh, and then all of a sudden I just see like 6 nurses pushing this incubator outside the room. And I'm just like, while I'm getting sewn up, I'm like watching them like just wheel him away and stuff. And then, like, I think I don't even remember. It was the next morning when we went to go see him because I was still like high and drugged up and
Right.
unable to walk. So they wheeled me down the next morning. It was around 8. I did tell Kevin to go down there that night, and he's like, no, I'm scared. I don't want to go down there without you. Because, he was 30 weeks, but he was measuring at 26 weeks.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So, and then they had told me that he had Down syndrome while we were in there. I was not ready for that news. And I actually feel horrible for feeling horrible, during that time, but eventually when you go through this, you got to give yourself grace. You can't
Exactly.
beat yourself up for, feeling certain ways at that time. We were grieving over the fact that we're like, okay, our child is not, our child has Down syndrome. How are we going to deal with this? We were in denial, and I honestly was in denial up until like maybe after a month he was born. So I kind of kept it a secret for a bit. And then, yeah, when we went to see him, like, I was like, oh my gosh, is he going to be okay? Is his skin transparent? What are we going to be walking into? So when we got there, my God, he was this tiny little thing, and he looked just like a regular baby. So we were totally like in awe with him. And, I think, well, Kevin was still adjusting to it and very scared because he had all these wires and tubes and, and of course Kevin had to go back to work. So I ended up coming up with my own little routine. I would eat breakfast, and it's like I would walk down there and just kind of hang out and just get to witness certain things, like, oh, his first poop, oh yeah. They took him off of the like heavy duty oscillator, and he was on a ventilator, more of a conventional ventilator. So it was really cool to see his transition. And then of course, like after 6 days, they're like, okay, you have to get discharged. Oh my God, it broke my heart. They're like, oh, you can watch him on the camera. That's not the same thing.
Right. You're leaving your baby. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just like when I first came home, that was very traumatizing. I thought that I would be happy to be home. But we got to the parking structure and Kevin parked at the very top. And he's like, look, it's a full moon. Maybe we should sit out here and look at the moon. Oh, girl. I looked at the moon, and then I looked at where my window was.
Mhm.
And I just started bawling because I was like, this was my home for 30 days.
Yeah, it's a long
You know,
time.
and I was like, this is, my baby's still there. So when we got home, I thought that I was going to be, cool, I'm home. But I guess you could say that entire experience was traumatic to the point where when I got home, I was like, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Kevin had to plug in the Christmas lights. It was January, but we still had all the Christmas stuff up. So he plugged it in, and then it kind of like dawned on me. I'm like, okay, this is how it was when I left the house. So it gave me some comfort. And then he was so sweet about everything. He put the NICU cam on the TV. So while I was pumping, I could see Hudson, and Hudson was like moving around. They called him Houdini baby. So it's like, and I'm sorry if I babble because I love talking about Hudson.
You're
you
fine.
know.
You're fine.
Yeah, so it was like many days of like everything he was doing well. We got to do skin to skin bonding for the first time, and let me tell you, it was just like not being able to hold your baby and then finally being able to hold him. That was like, I think this whole experience was very humbling, where you're like, crap, this is, like, and I there was so much anger too. I'll be honest. Like, I was pissed off that I could not bring my baby home.
Oh,
And I was kind
absolutely.
of like, my friends that have babies with, around the same time, they're like, oh my God, I'm not getting any sleep. I'm like, dude, you're complaining that you're not getting any sleep because your baby is crying next to you. I haven't even heard my baby cry, and it's like, I probably sounded like such a bee because I was like, just be thankful for what you have.
It's all about the perspective and
Yes.
appreciating, the appreciation.
Yes. And it's like, yeah, I felt, I mean, I was not in the best state of mind from that time. Like, I was like, oh, he needs to get better. But you know what I mean? I didn't want to be around anybody. Um, it's like, I just wanted to be in the hospital. I remember my OB, she was like, you're very depressed. I could tell you're depressed. She's like, do you want to talk to somebody? I went off on her. I was like, what is a therapist going to do for me right now? I was like, if I go to a therapist, that's time away from my son. And the only place I'm going to find comfort is being beside my son right now. So, like I said, while he was at Hogue, he was doing good. Then they had to transfer him to Chalk. And I already had this fear. And, when he declined, I actually had dreams the night before, and they were not pleasant dreams. So it was kind of like that gut feeling. And I kept telling myself, it's not a gut feeling, you're just paranoid. But unfortunately, it was a gut feeling. There was a night where he declined because he was off the ventilator. They put him on a CPAP. And as a Reiki healer, I'm very sensitive to energy. I can feel energy. So I was like, okay. So I kind of coasted my hand over his heart, and I closed my eyes, and I felt white light that basically what came to me was too pure for this earth. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to take. I don't know what to make of this. But those were the signs that I got. So when he got transferred to Chalk, I was hopeful that, it's like with the group of doctors and specialists, he would actually get better. Because when they put him back on the ventilator, he never recovered. And when he was back on the ventilator, we never got to hold him.
Oh, wow.
So it was like literally just kind of like the hand hugging from the isolate. And all I could do was read to him. That was the only thing. Or maybe change his diapers. But when he went to chalk, they had the lid of the isolate off, so I was able to see him more. I mean, the things that we would be so grateful for, his eyes opening, and we're like, oh, his eyes are open today. And it's like we had a few of those videos, which those videos where we actually get to see what he looked like. Um, those are the ones that we really hold, close to our hearts. Then of course, it's like one night, this was the worst. I got a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was one of his doctors who also was one of his doctors at Hogue. And she said, Cherry, how far do you live from here? I was like, I'm about 20 minutes. Why? And she said, because I'm concerned about his survival tonight. And I was like, what's going on? And she said, well, he keeps going under. I'm trying to tweak some medication because, like, his heart rate keeps going down, his blood pressure keeps going down. And I was like, oh my God, and it's like, and I felt horrible for this too, because I was like, you would think that I would want to rush over there. But, it's like, because we've been hearing bad news. So like the past few days, I was like, I don't even want to go over there. I'm not ready to see my son die. And you know what I mean? I'm not ready to deal with this. So it's like, I kept calling. I slept with one eye open. I kept calling. I called the nurse and stuff. And she was like, everything is okay. He's stable right now. But since then I never recovered. Like, I wouldn't get any sleep. I would have the camera on. If their camera was aiming towards the floor, that's usually a bad thing. They're working on him. And I would call, what's going on? Is everything okay? They're like, yeah, we're just changing his diaper. Or they're like, or sometimes I would hear stuff going on and they're like, we'll call you right back. We'll call you right back, but that after that night, that was 3 a.m. I woke up at 8. And then it's like, I went to the hospital. I was there almost every day, just beside, like, if you think about it, there wasn't really much I could do. I was just
Right.
there, and then the doctors are like, I don't know what's going on. There isn't anything else that we can do, but we read every night. I would talk to him, and honestly, it's like, I felt that he was communicating. I felt that he felt everything. He communicated through his numbers. And he was a feisty little one. He did not want to be touched, it's funny because, like, the nurses would share stories with me. They were like, yeah, your son's a fighter. He's feisty, and then when it got to that point where they're like, yeah, there's nothing left that we can do. They took us into a meeting, and, it was like, I remember my mom calling me, and my mom's been a nurse for, like, gosh, almost 50 years. And she was like, I don't know how to comfort you because I've never lost a child. And she was, like, this whole time I couldn't find myself to cry because I was like, if anything, I was pissed off.
You had anger in you.
I had a lot of anger. I wasn't ready for this. And, after that meeting, because I told Kevin, I was like, you're going to have to go with me to this meeting because I can't make any more decisions, because I was making pretty much most of the decisions, being that I had the medical background. It's like they would say stuff like, okay, we're going to give him this medication. There are really heavy side effects, but if we don't give it to him, he's going to die. The hell? You know what I mean? It's like, what? I don't want him to die, so give him this medication despite all the side effects. Yeah, so I was like, I can't make any more decisions without you. I said, because if this is an end of life, like, discussion, I said, I refuse to make this decision without you. And it's like, I remember going into this boardroom, and it was pretty intimidating because it had all these different doctors and specialists, and the social worker was there. And I mean, I hate to speak poorly about Chalk, but some of the doctors are not doctors. As a nurse, I'm just going to be blunt. They're not all of them are great.
Right.
All of them have empathy. Some of them, like, that particular doctor should not have been a pediatrician. like, or, neonatologist, whatever he was, but very, very cold about it. And so they were kind of telling, he was kind of telling me like, yeah, I'm concerned that he might die, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, listen, my kid has been fighting since he was in utero. And I was like, I have fought beside this child since day one, and he's strong. And I was like, and he's still in there fighting. I said, I don't feel that he's ready to go. And when he's ready to go, I'm going to know. So, they're like, okay, so they decided to give him more steroids. That was the final thing because he was very swollen. And they didn't know why. So then 2 days later, they were like, the nurse calls me and she said, Cherry, his vital signs are dropping. So we had to go over there. I told Kevin, and, Kevin was in denial. And that's tough when you're going through grief with your partner, but you guys are on 2 different levels. My level of understanding and the medical portion of it was obviously a lot more deeper than his. So it's like, I had him talk to the doctor. And, he was like, no, our son's going to make it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, geez.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I think I want to hold him before he passes. I'm trying to think about, when he passes. And then meanwhile, Kevin's like not ready to let go. So we get there and we have this, the nurse that was taking care of him, it was his regular morning nurse. She came up to me, she hugged me, she was bawling. I had no emotion. And she said, Cherry, he's dying. I don't want him to die, but the medical team does not think he's going to make it. And then I walked in the room, I looked at my son and I was like, he's going to go. And the social worker's like, do you remember in the other room the other day in the meeting when you said that you'll know when he's ready? And I looked at her, I started bawling. I said, I know he's ready to go. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, how's dad taking it? Because he was just standing there with Hudson. And I was like, he's not taking it well. I said, and it's going to be hard for me to tell him that because we're just going to fight because he's not going to want to hear this from me. So, the a-hole of the doctor comes in and he was like, hey, he's like, Hudson looks good though, right? He's like, I knew those steroids were going to work. He was like, because he's not swollen anymore. He looks good. And I'm like, he's dying, you a-hole.
Right. His vital signs are dropping and all things.
And you're sitting here telling me how great your recommendation was because he's not swollen anymore. Like, what the hell? So, he was like, well, he's like, Cherry, he's dying. I said, I know he's dying, and he was like, but does dad know he's dying? And I was like, you know what? I pulled him to the side of the hallway. I'm like, you need to talk to. I was like, it's your job to talk to him. I said, I don't care if you think his questions are stupid. You need to explain to him this process. I said, you need to talk to him until he understands. That's your job as a doctor. Mm-hmm. And he was like, so he was in there with him and, I was with the nurses. We were all in the room and I was like, you know what? I need to step out. I said, I can't hear this anymore. I was like, I can't be in here for this. So when the doctor left, Kevin's like, what do you want to do? And I had told him, I said, you know what? Let's see if they'll allow the grandmas to come in. Let's see if they'll allow aunts and uncles to come in. So it was like, I asked the nurse, do you think family members can come in? She's like, yeah, we can make this happen, and this is how I knew already. This is how I knew that, he was going to pass. I had called my mom. She's like, can I see him tomorrow? I'm like, he doesn't have until tomorrow.
And
like
it's an urgent situation.
Yeah. She was like, are you serious? I'm like, no pressure, but if you want to meet your grandson, please try to come tonight because I don't know how much longer he has. So we had everybody there, and he was happy. He was happy because like his numbers like jumped up so high.
And I feel the love.
He felt the love. I was like hoping he was like I'm up for one more run. And I looked at him, I'm like, come on, baby, come on, one more, you know. And then after Kevin's brother-in-law showed up around midnight, the number started to drop. And then the on-call doctor came up to me and he was like, you know, it's almost time. And I said, yeah. And he was like, you know, I'm sorry. And he said, what would you like to do for the end of life? I said, no chest compressions. Don't unplug anything. He's going to go on his own, you know? So we spent the night there, and, you know, we tried to be as, you know, like lighthearted as we possibly could. We, you know, I was like, I want some hot chocolate just to feel a little better. So we went down to the cafeteria, and then it's like, I wanted to sleep good, and I was sleeping on the recliner. I gave Kevin the couch. I slept on the recliner just in case something happened. I wanted to be, you know, like I wanted to be awake. But this night I had asked the nurse, I'm like, can you get me a cot? Can I sleep in a cot? And this nurse was like badass. She like fought she fought, like, I don't know what this lady was, but she wasn't even a nurse, but she was like, this is fire hazard, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, the nurse was like, get out of here. We're not, what the hell? This doesn't concern you. So we got our cot. So it's like, we slept, 3:00 in the morning, the charge nurse woke me up and she said, Cherry, his heart rate is dropping. It's at 120. And she said, I know you guys are sleeping. I know you guys are tired, but as a mom, I would want somebody to wake me up. I said, okay, you know, so then, you know, Kevin and I were just standing right by him, and, you know, I didn't know what to say, you know. Kevin went to the bathroom. I didn't know this, but he was so overwhelmed with everything, he ended up throwing up. And then he came back, and then he was like, babe, look at him. He's telling us he wants to go. And it's like, for me, I was like, okay, because I needed to make sure that Kevin was going to be okay with it, because I didn't want to make a decision and then we're going to fight, or, you know, I don't want him to have any resentment towards me. But as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, crap. Like, you were the one that was in denial. Now you're ready to let him go. So like, they're looking at me. What do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to hold him until he goes. So I said, don't take him off of the oscillator, because I want to hold my baby while he's alive. I don't want to hold him when he's passed. So we had 2 hours with him, as you probably saw in, like, you know, the videos that I had. And you know, it's funny. I got so much criticism for that from, you know, like, and I expected that, because they're like, why would you record that? You know, and at that moment, because Kevin was recording everything, and Kevin's all about documenting everything. He wants to document memories and stuff. And it's like, you could see me in the video, like looking at him, kind of like, in a sense, I'm like, I have this look on my face. I don't know what it looked like, but in my head, I was like, why are you recording this right now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, turn that off. But I was like, okay, you know what? This is his way of grieving. So,
Right.
you know, I kept it. I just, like, you know, I mean, I was just watching these, like, nurses, the respiratory therapists, they were just like putting him on me. And I was like thinking that I was mad, because I was like, I wanted to hold him this whole time. And then now now that I get to hold him, he's dying.
Yeah, that's really tough. That's like a hard thing to go through.
Yeah. So it was a beautiful time. You know, it was very peaceful. You know, it was just like, and I know this might be graphic, but you know, it's like, I started to notice his body temperature was changing. He started to look, you know, he started to look different. And then it's like, I thought he had already passed. I didn't want to move my arm. And then the nurses would come in, and they're like, you know, I asked, is he still with us? They're like, yeah, he's still with us. You know, and then the charge nurse came, and she said, you know, most people want to take off the tape and the tubes. Would you like to do that? Which, I'm not stupid. I know that when they do that, we're unplugging.
Right.
And, you know, she's like, you don't have to think about it now. Just think about it. And then, you know, we'll come back later. And as I was holding him, like moments after that, I could hear him trying to take his last breaths on his own. And I asked Kevin, how would you feel about, when when he's like ready to go, like when it's close to him to go, I said, how do you feel about taking the tube out so his last breaths are his and not the machine's? And he's like, I'm okay with that. So then I asked the doctor, and she was like, these people that were there, we were blessed because his original nurse that admitted him, that really cared about him, she was there the whole time. And then the doctor that actually like was rooting for him, she was, I think she's a fellow. She was there. So I was blessed to have like these group of people that were there. And it's almost like Hudson chose the people that he wanted to be there when he passed.
Right.
And I asked her, I said, is he going to feel any pain? And she's like, no, we'll give him medication. They didn't give him medication, but she's like, he's not going to feel anything. And so they turned off all the machines, and it was just quiet. And it's like that silence really killed me, because I knew that he was gone. Because like the color immediately changed, and it was a time. It was a time, because just it was just holding him was different compared to when there was still life in him. And we held him for another few minutes. The nurses had asked me, like, do you want to give him a bath? And I was like, I wasn't comfortable with that, because I'm like, you guys are asking me to do postmortem care on my own child. I said, this is where I draw the line. I've already experienced enough out of my comfort zone today. I said, literally watching him die and hold him until he dies, I was like, that's already big. And as a nurse, that's, one thing I can't handle is death. I've had to do postmortem care on patients, and it's like, it just petrifies me. So yeah, I was like, yeah, no, I watched them. And then these people came in with, with clothes. They're like, here, like, and for me, I was like, and I understand why they do it, but my anger at this time, I'm like, why are we playing with a dead body right now? Like, I know that sounds morbid, but this is what was going through my head. And, they're like, okay, we're going to cut his hair. So they cut a piece of his hair and, put it in a little baggie. They gave him a bath, and I thought it was kind of odd because they were talking to him like he was still alive. And I was like, well, his spirit is still here. One of the beautiful things that we got to do, I crocheted a blanket. That was the first thing I did when I found out I was having a boy. I crocheted a blue blanket, and I continued to crochet it while I was in the hospital and till like maybe 2 days before he passed. And they, when they put clothes on him, I didn't realize how small he really was, because it's like he was swimming in those clothes. And they're like, do you have a blanket that you want to wrap him up in? Because they asked me if I had clothes. I'm like, why would I have clothes? I'm not anticipating on taking him home, nor was I anticipating on him dying. It's like, odd. Like, did you bring clothes for your child before they pass? But I actually had the blanket, and it still had the crochet needle attached to it.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, you know what, here, and it was perfect size for him. So it's like, I literally took the needle out, knotted it, ripped it, and we wrapped him up in that. So he was swaddled in that. And, it was sad because it's like the nurses were already taking down the stuff from the walls and everything. And, they were packing up his stuff, helping us pack everything. And, Hudson was just there on his bed. And, we napped. Kevin's like, I'm not ready to go home. But, once 4 hours hits, to be technical, what happens after 4 hours. And it's like we didn't need any more trauma. So it had already been like, I think 5 hours. And I was like, okay, I told Kevin, I know you want to stay. I was like, but if we stay longer, it's going to be really bad for us. Because by the time, I gave Hudson his last kiss, he was already not the color, And so he was like, Kevin asked me, do you want to take the blanket? And I said, no, leave it with him because he's going to be put in a freezer and it's going to be cold. So like we walked out of there and it's like, it was crazy because we were like, I looked at Kevin, I was like, he should have been walking out with us.
Yeah, you felt like a piece of you. I mean, it's like you're missing, your son. He was supposed to be there with you.
So we lost a piece of ourselves. And then it was like, I called the boys actually like probably an hour after he passed. We're like, yeah, your brother passed. And they're like, wait, really? So we're like, yeah, he passed. We're like, you don't have to go to school if you don't want to. So when we got home, we didn't even make it like up the stairs. The boys like gave us a hug. And they were like, they came into the room and, they were asking what happened. Sorry.
You're fine. You're fine.
And we, we told them about everything that happened and they started crying. And I told Kevin, I was like, I just want to sleep right now. I was like, I just want to sleep. My mom came, probably hours after. And she was like, how are you? I'm like, and I just started bawling. And I haven't cried in front of my mom for like years, and she was like, none of this is your fault. Your body didn't fail you, and then, just having to deal with like, the social worker was like, I know, I'm not trying to sound cold, but she was like, you have a week to figure out what you're going to do with the body.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because they have to, understandable, so they're like, they paid, Chalk actually pays $1,000 for the memorial and all that stuff. So it's like, thankfully I was able to, I just had him cremated. And then it's like, I had to plan a funeral within, that week and stuff. And I felt that was the last thing that I could do for him. It was kind of like planning a first birthday. I wanted it to be perfect. I didn't want anybody wearing black. I wanted everybody to wear blue. And, I wanted it to be as light as possible. And it was pretty, a lot of crazy things that like happened after that. I don't know if you believe in signs, but somehow I got directed to a medium. And it's like, there's this book that I got from a high school friend. It's called Signs, which is, it's a secret language from the universe. Basically, it's like you ask your deceased loved one for a sign and then it shows up. And sometimes I was like, okay, well, is this coincidence? But there were so many different signs, like, after he had passed, before we got his ashes, I wanted to get a shelf from Home Goods because I was like, I want him to have like the perfect place, perfect
Right.
spot. And Hudson was born 11 or 1-1. And his bed in the NICU at Hogue was 11. So 11. And when we went to Home Goods, we paid for the, they called us, they have that automatic, that, that voice that's like, please go to cashier 11. We get there. And like, Kevin's like, oh, babe, it's 11. I'm like, yeah, it's probably a coincidence. So then we go to BJ's and they're like, the only place that we have available is the bar. Now I have my minor kids with me. That's kind of weird that you would sit us at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
So we're eating, we're just, chatting. And then it's like, I'm looking at the shelf and the bars. And I'm like, I see SON covered by this fan and it says whiskey. And I was like, does that say Hudson? It said Hudson whiskey.
Wow.
I was like, am I going crazy? Am I going crazy? And then like, I'll just, with these signs, I'll wrap it up with this one. Cause this one was just crazy as heck. And I think that this was after I had my my reading with my medium. We went to the movies. We were supposed to watch Shazam, and for some reason they couldn't get the movie to work in that Dolby theater. So they're like, okay, you know, go to the other, you know, they made us go to another theater. So we're all waiting, and all of a sudden Courtney Cox shows up. We're like, wait, what the heck? Courtney Cox is in Shazam, and she's like, yeah, thank you for watching my movie. My you know, my sons are like, dude, this is Scream 6. What the heck?
Hmm.
So we get annoyed. We're about to like leave. And then this lady comes back. She's like, they're going to change it. They're going to change it. So as I'm walking back to my seat, and if you've ever seen Scream 6, you probably remember this, but you know, this lady was like, oh yeah, I'm on Hudson Street.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Like you had
And
to hear that.
it said 3 times. And I'm like, what the heck? What the heck? So that provided me comfort to know that, you know, he was still around. And, you know, this is exactly why, like, you know, I went through all the, you know, the emotions of being angry, you know, in denial. But knowing that, you know, he was kind of showing his presence in his own way,
Yes.
it made me feel like, okay, I can be at peace. It helped me find peace. Yeah, sorry, that was a lot.
That's okay. And I think that that's, you know, it's those signs that they reminders. There's a lot of things that I see with loved ones who've gone like, you know, maybe it's like a butterfly or, you know, like little things like that. And it's like, okay, it brings you peace, it brings you comfort. And I think that that's amazing. And there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about because through all of this, you had to heal again, but it was a different type of healing that you had to do. And but what you created something very powerful from this. You created the founder of Hudson's Gift. And could you tell my listeners a little bit about that? So I think it's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Hudson's Gift. So Christmas time was coming. And, you know, after all of this, I wanted to do something to give back. So I had that thought in the back of my mind. And then when Christmas was coming up, I'm like, oh, you know, what do we do for Hudson? And I was like, I don't want to keep giving him a stuffed animal to put on his, like, you know, little resting area. Cause then, you know what I mean? Years are going to pass and it's like, it's way too much toys. Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what if we do something, you know, why don't we do an act to basically, you know, honor him? And then the crazy thing too, it's like, you know, this has to do with my medium again. I wanted to do a 2-parters to it. First, I wasn't even thinking about the NICU. I was thinking more along the lines of like the people that were in Hogue that actually had to stay on bed rest. Because it's like, for me, I remember being miserable and I'm like, maybe we can give them a goodie bag, you know? So I was like, what did I need when I was in there? I'm like, I needed a nail file. You know, so I put together like just like goodies. And there was another mom that I met through social media that had oligohydramnios, and she works for Tatcha Cosmetics. So she actually said, you know, people were so great about it. They were donating and they were actually like, you know, she sent some of the products over. And I was like, huh, you know, cool. Like we put that together. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I will buy 2 of those So Teeny, So Tiny books that I read to him every night. And I'll give that to you know, I'll give it to one, whatever bed he was in. So bed 11 and then room 480 in chalk.
Hmm.
Which, side note, I actually got in contact with that author because she wrote that about her son. And I don't know why, but the day that Hudson died, I had the urge to contact her. And I said, I want to let you know that your book meant a lot to us. You know, I shared that you know, we read that to him every night. And, you know, even her words are engraved on his, you know, on my necklace and on his urn.
Hmm.
So, you know, it's like she started following more of the story and everything. And I told her, I said, hey, I just wanted to let you know, I'm going to be giving your book out, you know, for this little foundation. And she was like, oh, she's like, you know what? I would love to send some books over, and so it's like I asked the social worker from Chalk, I said, how many patients do you have? She's like, 50. No, it was 70. And I'm like, oh my God, there's 70 kids that are like, whoa, So I was like, well, I said, you don't have to give this much, but it's 70. And she was like, you know what? I'll go ahead and send you 70 books.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, wow, and so it's like I had it on my story. So it's like a few people wanted to participate. My medium was like, Cherry, I wanna help. So she donated from 2 of her readings. And she said, okay, I'm sending something to your house. She's like, I went into meditation and I asked Hudson to inspire me. And this is another sign, and I just about freaking lost my mind when I received the package. It was the So Teeny So Tiny book, and it was this little bear. And I was like, I never
That's
freaking
okay.
told her about this bear.
Mhm.
And it's like, I was like, this bear got lost in the linen. And you know what I mean? It's like, I never shared that with anybody. And then it's like, I started tripping out and I contacted her. I'm like, hey, I never told you about this bear. How did you find out about this bear? She's like, I had no idea, you know? And then it's like, I sent her a video where I was talking to Hudson. I'm like, hey, your numbers look good. And I'm kind of caressing his cheek. And then there's that little bear. And I told Kevin, I said, if this bear is the same color as the bear that he lost, I'm going to freaking lose my mind. And we were both watching it together, and it was. And he's like, no freaking way. He's like, I'm keeping one. I'm like, hey, we're giving these to the. I said, okay, go ahead. I said, keep one then. So, we I literally started like, getting emotional. I'm like, Hudson is calling the shots. He's like, this
Yeah.
is my foundation. This is what meant. This was like, these are staples to my journey. So I want you to give these out. So that's basically what we put in there. We were like, okay, like we'll put the book so the parents can read, and this it's very inexpensive. Well, not really.
Mhm.
The books are like $10 each, but
Mm.
it's just the fact that we can give back.
Right, right.
And also it feels good to be able to have Lori's book, her name, yeah, Lori, the author. It's good to have her book out there, because she's sharing her journey with her son. Her son is doing really well.
Mhm.
um and she, actually, she was, the cool thing was, just recently she had her book published at Barnes and Nobles. Now it's a hard copy. And she was gracious enough to ask different moms who've been in the NICU journey for pictures. So it's like, along with myself and Hudson, other moms and other babies were featured like in her book, so she
Oh, that's
dedicated it to
awesome.
them. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's really great. So it felt good to be able to drop all these gifts off during Christmas. I was really stressed out and nervous that we weren't going to get it there on time. It's like, and it was it was tough to go back to those hospitals. I got to see the social worker that was, there supporting me in Chalk. It's like, she got a cart, she had all of them. And and one of my high school friends gave me one of those like Beanie Babies, the Marvels, because I used to collect those for Hudson. And that happened to be the only one. And I told the social worker, I'm like, she's like, who do you want me to give this to? Is there anybody in particular? I said, find a baby that reminds you of Hudson. You don't have to tell me about it, but I was like, I just hope that this will be able to make these moms happy during this time.
Right.
Because really during that being in the NICU, it really stinks. It's like, if you ever walk into that unit, it's like a dark cloud of like anxiety, depression. It was really hard being in there and seeing these parents. We're over here with like, I just pictured this dark cloud over us, and we're sitting here trying to do like arts and crafts,
Yeah.
trying to make light of the situation. But it's like, even though it was pretty dark in there, like Chalk, I have to hand it to them. It's like, all these volunteers, like they're like, here, there's some beads that you guys could put together for your baby, and it's like, if I were to put myself in that time again, and it's like somebody's like, oh, here's a book, it's like, oh wow, that's, that I think that anything helps.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that that's amazing at what you did, and it's something that, I mean, I would love for, like, you're gonna do it next year, and this coming year, Christmas is around the corner, all of those things, and so those are one of the things I want to leave for my listeners is a way that they can donate and help you with this cause because I think it's amazing. And one of the things that I think is about like everything that you went through, you documented the journey, and even though it was hard, and like you're like, Kevin, why are you filming this when you can go back and watch it or even just reflect on it? I think it's amazing. And one of the things, if I could do things all over again, I would have lived more in the present. And even like my children's birthday parties or any of those, I'm like taking all the pictures, but then like, where's me? Like the kids even know they had a mom there. And that's one of the things is just to be present in the journey. And and I know that you had some, like, you're looking at it now a little differently, and just the way that you have all the lessons that you've learned through all the hard, and then the journey that you've went through with, both things that we talked about today. I think it's really amazing. So I say that, much gratitude to you for shining today, by refining, going through, looking at the lessons. What did I learn from this? I think it's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
One thing I wanted to talk about really quick before we close is, what is one phrase or word that you would like to leave for the listeners and a call to action?
A phrase or word. Let's see. Don't waste your pain.
I like that.
It's like your pain is pretty powerful. You can either use it for darkness or you can use it for, you can use it to shed light on others.
I like that. I like that. Thank you so much. And
Thank-
I will leave it in the show notes, all the things, the ways that my listeners can follow you. But if they wanted to get, what's the best way to contact you or follow you?
Probably my Instagram.
Okay. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Refine and Shine. We hope you find valuable insights and inspiration to fill your journey of continuous improvement. Remember, the key to success lies in refining your processes and letting your inner brilliance shine. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback is greatly appreciated and helps us reach more listeners like you who are eager to refine and shine in all areas of life. Stay connected with us on social media for updates and additional resources and behind the scenes content. We love hearing from our listeners, so feel free to reach out with any suggestions, questions, or success stories you'd like to share. As we wrap up, remember that the power to transform your life lies within you. Keep striving for growth, embracing change, and seeking opportunities to refine your skills. Together, let's continue to shine bright and make a positive impact in the world. Until next time, keep refining and keep shining.